Hyper with Node.js using MVC Architecture. Hi, I'm Tom Wilson, and today we're going to do part 2 of the Hyper NodeJS Workshop. In the previous workshop, part 1, we started from scratch, built an Express app, built a MVC architecture with Hyper, with the Mario Wiki app, and on games. So we did the list and we did the add. And today we're going to do show, remove, and update. And again, we're going to kind of start from scratch. We're going to start where we left off, and we'll essentially uh, um, clone that repository or fork it and go from there. So if you haven't done the previous workshop, you'll need to do that one first, and that would be most helpful to follow along. Um, or you could start here, but it may you may get lost a little bit. So in the description, there will be a link to the first workshop, and highly recommend you do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to log into GitHub. Okay. And then we're going to go to Hyper 63 demo Mario Wiki part 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to fork that, because that's pretty much all the code we did in the previous workshop. So we're going to fork that. Let's see. It's not going to let me fork it because. So, okay. So what we'll do is we'll open it in Gitpod, or you can clone it if you want. Either way. And what we'll do is go back to our GitHub, and we'll create a new repo called Mario Wiki Part 2. We can make that public, and we'll create that repository. And then we're just going to copy this URL to our Git repo. So we'll copy that. And I'm just going to refresh this. Sometimes it gets hung. There we go. So what we're just going to do is in our Git remote view, and we'll zoom in on that. What we want to do is replace origin. And so we'll say git remote remove origin, git remote add origin, and we'll paste our part 2 repo. And then we'll just do a git push origin master, and then that should update our part 2 here. And that way we've got a clean slate. You could continue working on part 1 if you wanted to, but this is just to have a clean repo that has the part 2 stuff in it. So let's go ahead and just make sure everything works. And what we need to do is create a .env file. So we'll create a .env, and then we want to put our hyper connection string in there. And if you remember, our hyper connect string is on the dashboard.hyper.io. And we're just going to access that. And then I can't remember which one it was. Let's just try that one. Okay. And then we're going to go yarn and yarn depth. Open that in the browser. And go to our games. Cool. So we've got our games and we've got the ability to add a game. Right. Let's make sure that works. Cool. We were able to add a game. And now we can start working on our show feature. So I'm going to try to do this via views and controllers and models kind of outside in, but you can kind of work on these features any way you want. So we have our views, and in our views we have our games, and what we want to add is a show view. So we'll do show.ejs, and we're going to obviously make it HTML, and we're going to include the head section, and we have the body, and then a header, and then we're going to include our nav, right? And we'll set our title, and then in our main, what we want to do is show the game. So the user will click on a card, and then we'll take them to this screen and show the game, and that'll be in a section, and we'll do an H2 of game.name, and we'll do a P of game.description, and we'll do a P of published. Let's do this. And game.published. Cool. So that's our view, but we do want to have kind of a little button section here. So let's just add a div, and then we'll say href equals, and this will be games, game.id, edit. So this will be our edit button, and it's a button, and we'll just call it edit. And we'll do a button, and ID will be delete and remove. Okay. So what we want to do is for the delete, we want to, prompt and say, are you sure you want to delete? And then we're going to make a delete call to our server. So we need kind of a script, and we'll just inline it here in the HTML. and we'll listen for the click event. And when the event comes, we're going to say if confirm, are you sure? Do you want to delete? And if they click OK, then we're going to do a fetch. And we're going to do window.location.path_name. So it would be the same path that we're on, which we're kind of in a show mode with the ID. And so we have the path name, and then we just need to supply a method. And if the result is okay, we're going to redirect to games, to the game list. Otherwise, we're just going to alert the, let's say, error, and then just include the status text there. Okay. So that's our show page. It's going to give us the view of the game document. We'll see the name, the description, and it's published. Then we'll have two buttons to edit and remove. And then we have some script to handle our remove function. And obviously the edit will link to an edit view, which will be our form. So the next thing we want to do is make our controller. We'll go ahead and make a controller. So we'll go to controllers and games and create a new file called show.js. And in that new controller file, we're going to import our model from models.game.js. And then we're going to have a function that's default. And it'll take a request object and a response object. And then we're going to get our game from our model, passing the request.params.id from Express. And then we're going to render our view, games.show, and we need to give it a title, Mario Wiki -game, and we'll say game.name, and then we'll include the game document in our data object for our render. So that will display the object, which is cool. Now, we don't have a get function in our model, so we need to go to our model and add the get function. We can come down here, export a sync function get, and we'll call Hyper to get it. So this is going to take an ID, and we'll call Hyper to get our document using await.hyper.data.get ID, and then we'll validate it. Now, you might think that, it should be correct, right? But what if they pass an ID that may be of a different document or whatever? We want that to error out. So we want to validate this game and make sure that it's successful. and we'll return data, else return error. Right? Okay. So that takes care of our get. And now we need to create an endpoint on our server.js file for our controller function. So we'll go to server.js and we're going to import game show. Okay. And then we'll add our endpoint. So it'll be app.get/games/id game show. Yeah, cool. All right. So now we just need to modify our list view. So if we go in our views, our index view, and we just need to add an href around each card. So each aside is a card, and we're just going to do an href, and we're going to go to games, game.id, that, and my, right. So we have our game.id, and then want to mess with the styles a little bit. We just want to do text decoration none. So when it highlights this card, it won't underline everything. Okay. All right. So it's a good sign that our server's still running. Let's go over here to games, and we do have the pointer, so that's a good sign. So let's choose one, and could not find matching close tag. So we've got a little bug. It's probably on the show EJS would be my guess. So we'll go to show EJS, and let's see. Ah, games. Maybe that was it. Let's go back and just reload just to make sure. Cool. That was it. So now we've got our show. We got our edit and remove. If we hit remove, are you sure? And get our error that it's not found. We hit edit. Of course, that page doesn't exist yet, so we're good. We can click on games to go back to the games list. All right, so that's show. Now let's go ahead and do remove game. Remove game is pretty easy. The first thing we want to do is go into controllers, games, actions, I think. Controllers, games, actions. We want to just add a remove function. So we'll do export, async function, remove, request response, and then we're going to call games.remove request.params.id. And if result is okay, then we're going to send okay true. Else we're going to send, so in this case, we're not doing a view, we're sending some JSON. Okay. Now remove doesn't exist in our model, so we need to add it. ID. Now, you could just call data.remove.id, but I want to make sure it's a valid game before I remove it. So I'm going to go ahead and just do game await hyper data get ID and get the game. And then I'm going to do a validation. Make sure it's a valid game. And if that's successful, then I'm going to do result equals await dot hyper dot data dot remove given the ID. And then I'm going to return result. And then otherwise, I'm going to just return okay, false, error, not found. And that's my remove function. And then we just need to update the server.js with our new endpoint. So we'll say app.delete games ID game actions remove. Okay. So all is well in the world. So let's give it a spin. Let's go to home, games. Miss Pac-Man is not a Mario game. So let's remove it. And cool. We came back. Miss Pac-Man's gone. Awesome. And we were able to add it back. Very cool. So that's show and that's remove. Now the last one is edit and update. So what we want to do is when we go here and click on this edit button, we want to go to the same form that we have for our ad, but we want it to be an edit, and we want all of the data to be full so that when we submit it, it's going to overwrite that record. Pretty cool. So getting started with that, we need to kind of work on the server. So we'll start at the server and handle our edit URL. So we'll go to server.js and we'll create a get slash games ID edit. And we want to add CSRF protection. We did with the new, and then game form. Right? And I'm gonna put this. I don't think it matters with Express, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'll put it up here. Um, and yeah, so we've got the link, so that should take us to the game form. We go Mario and edit, and it does. Now we just need to modify our controller form function, and what we're going to do is basically if it's and if it has an ID, we'll get that game and display it. But if it doesn't, we'll return a blank document. So we'll bring in our model. And then we'll say if request.params.id, then we'll get the game. Request.params.id. Okay. And then we'll just return the rendered view, right? Game/form. And in our data, we'll set our title. And we have to set our cross-site reference to request.csrf token. And so description's optional. So we're going to go ahead and default description equal to blank. And then we're going to basically bring in game. So if game has the description already, then it'll overwrite this default here. And that'll just make things easier. And we're returning. So on this if, then we can just leave this all the same and we should be good. Okay. So now let's check this out. Oops, what did we break? Ah, okay. So games, we add a game, looks good. We edit a game, cool. We've got our data. We want to change this to edit, and we need to um, modify the view to have a ID in it as a hidden field. So we're going to go to our form view and we'll just do something simple here. Say if game.id, and then we'll do else love templates. So we'll give it an H2 of an add if the game ID doesn't exist. And we'll give it an H2 and say edit if game ID exists. And then the same thing, we're going to do another if statement right here. And if the ID exists, so it's just ID, it's helpful, then we're going to add this hidden ID field, which will get posted back to our server. Okay. And now we're going to go to our controller actions. And we've got this create. We're going to change that to create or update. And that's going to break our server. So if we go to our server, it's calling create. We want to say create or update. All right. And then what we'll do is we have to just basically do a check here. And not generate an ID. And then we need to, hang on, get to my notes. Okay, yeah. So we still parse the body like that, and then we change this result to a let and move it, and then we do an if request body.id. Then we're going to say result equals await games.update request.body.id, and then we would include our document. And this will have request.body.id, and it'll be a type of game, and then name, description, and published. Right? And then this would be else. Like that. And then we'll check if results okay. And if it is, we'll just, for this example, we'll say add update is successful. Otherwise, we couldn't save the game. Okay. Cool. So let's give it a shot. Oh, I think I forgot one thing. So we added this update function, but we didn't add it to our model. So we need to go to our game model and add that update function. So we go to models, game, and add an update function. So it's export async function, update, and it takes the ID in the game. And we want to validate the game. And if that's successful, then we're going to return await hyper data update, and again the ID and the data. Otherwise, we're going to return okay false and the error. Okay, let's give it a shot. We'll start with home, go to games. Let's add a description for Miss Pac-Man. Chop, chop. Okay, success. Cool, worked. So now you've got kind of a full CRUD. Let's make sure add works. Sonic on 1988. Just guessing. Sweet. We've got Sonic. Very cool. So with that, what we're going to do is check in our code. Controllers, get status, get add views. So we implemented the show, the update, and remove game feature. remove for the game model. So that kind of concludes this part of the workshop. Definitely try that. And then what we'll do is behind the scenes, I'll go and do this exact same process for the character model. Character literally will be the same model as game, except for having a type of character. And what I encourage you to do is practice doing the character using the same steps we did the game. So, views and controllers and models. You would have a character model. You would have a folder called characters and have all of these controllers and views. You would have a folder called characters and you would have all of these views. And then would wire it up just like we started with games. Oops. We would start with characters, and the server's not running right now. So with that, that is part two of the Hyper NodeJS workshop, and we will be looking out for part three. Thanks.